long before myths were written, before stories were carved on cave walls. Early humans lived in a world where night belonged to the hunters. Some creatures stalked with silent paws. Others glided beneath moonlit skies. But among them existed a category of predator more unsettling than any giant beast: the creatures that fed directly on blood. The first vampires were not legends. They were real, living animals, strange, evolved specialists that knew how to drink blood without being detected. And our ancestors feared them for good reason. Tonight, we step back into the prehistoric world, to a time when the darkness hid more than shadows. It hid blood feeders with needle teeth, razor tongues, and perfect stealth. Some were tiny, some surprisingly large, and a few were bold enough to creep up on sleeping humans under the cover of night. In the dense, ancient forests of South America lived one of the strangest creatures of the Ice Age. Not a giant predator, but a giant bat. Its name was Desmodus draculae, the giant vampire bat. This wasn't the fragile creature we know today. This one had a wingspan longer than a human arm, powerful crawling limbs, and fangs sharp enough to pierce even the thick skin of ancient megafauna. It fed on ground sloths, prehistoric horses, and giant camels, but humans eventually entered its world. Fossils show that these vampire bats survived long enough to overlap with early tribes who wandered the continent. Imagine being a human sleeping in a dark forest, hearing soft wing beats above you, feeling a tiny prick on your skin, and waking to find blood slowly dripping from a perfectly round wound. No wonder early tribes whispered about night spirits and flying blood drinkers. They weren't imagining things. Something truly was out there. Elsewhere, thousands of kilometers away on isolated Pacific islands, a very different vampire evolved: the vampire finch. At first glance, it looked harmless, small, brown, delicate. But during droughts, when food became scarce, this little bird revealed its darker survival strategy. It would land gently on a sleeping creature, typically a large seabird, then peck open the skin and drink the blood as it flowed. It didn't kill its victim, it just took what it needed. This strange behavior likely began as parasite cleaning and slowly shifted into blood feeding over thousands of years. Imagine early humans landing on these islands and seeing a tiny, innocent-looking bird do something so unsettling. To them, this would not be biology, it would be an omen. And while the skies and forests had their vampires, the water had its own, far older, far stranger, and far more primitive: the prehistoric lamprey. Modern lampreys already looked like nightmares, jawless creatures with circular mouths lined with hooked teeth, designed to latch on to animals and drain blood through suction. But prehistoric lampreys were larger, stronger, and more aggressive. Picture early humans crossing a murky river, unaware of what lurked below. A sudden tug at the leg, a burning pain, and the horrifying sight of a creature clinging to the skin, drinking blood with a mouth shaped like a living drill. Stories of water demons or river spirits likely began with encounters exactly like this. Blood feeding, what scientists call hematophagy, is one of evolution's strangest inventions. It appeared multiple times across completely different species. Some insects evolved microscopic needles. Some worms built hooks and barbs. Some mammals developed stealth so perfect a sleeping animal wouldn't feel a thing. Early humans lived close to nature. To them, these creatures weren't oddities, they were threats. A single bite could mean infection, fever, or death. So cultures around the world created myths: night demons, shadow birds, blood drinkers, winged spirits. What they were really describing were the vampire animals living beside them. One of the most surprising archaeological discoveries comes from a cave in South America. There, scientists found ancient human bones with bite marks that match vampire bats. This means early humans weren't just afraid of blood feeders. They were actual prey, sometimes bitten while they slept, sometimes waking with infections. Sometimes entire camps moved because the bats kept returning. Even today, in remote forests, vampire bats occasionally bite sleeping people. Now, imagine that same event happening thousands of years ago, without medicine, without fire barriers, without safe shelters. It was far more dangerous. What makes vampire animals so eerie is not just what they take, but how they do it. Giant vampire bats shared food with injured members of their colony, showing complex social intelligence. Vampire finches learned exactly which animals tolerated being pecked. Lampreys detected blood chemicals drifting through the water from meters away. Some insects evolved anesthetics that numbed the skin before they bite. These weren't mindless creatures. They were specialists, experts of stealth, precision, and survival. And early humans were simply another mammal in their environment. Over time, stories grew. Bats became demons. River creatures became water spirits. Blood-drinking birds became messengers of misfortune. The fear of losing blood, of something taking life from you in the dark, became one of humanity's oldest nightmares. Much later, when civilizations rose and humans began crafting legends, these ancient fears transformed into myths of vampires, night walkers, and hidden beasts of the dark. But the roots of those stories stretch far beyond castles and old folklore. They reach back into prehistory, to the early humans who faced real blood drinkers in the wild. Today, most blood-feeding creatures are tiny, often harmless. But millions of years ago, the world was wilder. The nights were deeper, the forests filled with strange sounds, and the creatures that sensed our presence had evolved for one purpose: to feed on living blood. The first vampires were not monsters of legend. They were animals, shaped by evolution, guided by hunger, and feared by the earliest humans who crossed their path. And even today, when we hear a bat flutter past or feel something brush the skin in the dark, a quiet echo returns, a memory from our ancient past when something out there watched us and waited for a taste of life. This was the world of the first vampire animals.